Hare Krishna. Welcome to VIPLAVAH 2024 event of ISKCON Ministry of Education. We focus on Krishna conscious education for children to gather insights from educators across the world in multiple languages on how to address holistic approach to child development as future of the movement, balancing spiritual, moral, academic growth, and skill-based training as an ongoing process. Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi is presenting on importance of modern education for children. She has served ISKCON continuously since her initiation by Srila Prabhupada in 1973. She has a PhD in education, was a primary and secondary teacher for 27 years, and has 19 years of experience with school management. She is the chair of the Sastric Advisory Council to the GBC, was an associate editor of Back to Godhead magazine for 30 years, and formerly a professor of Sociology of Religion at Bhaktivedanta College. She is the author of several books. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, ask Mataji, I've been thinking about this for the last 2 years mainly, as I was involved in the UK, this curriculum and various research project, kind of partial research project with the schools and trusts and academies that run multiple schools, and how the mode of delivery, how we deliver to the young generation, especially the Gen Z, the new generation coming up, who are mostly based on tablets and mobile devices. So we are trying very hard to allocate the times so that they can get used to reading books, proper books. That's something we are doing, but it's almost inevitable, the transition that's happening at the moment over the last 5-10 years, and this generation were very used to digital devices.
Are you asking for my thoughts?
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, the late Prabhupada developed Bhakti Learning, which is a digital system. He digitized my whole Learn to Read program, which took many years. And he also digitized his Sanskrit course and some other things. It hasn't proved to be very popular because somehow it's expensive. And devotees have this mood that everything should be free or cheap. Keep that in mind also. There's a real mood in ISKCON that everything should be free or cheap. My own personal thoughts on this is that the printing press was developed in 1440. And people didn't, before then, books were handwritten, hand copied, and most people did not have a book in their home. The average person did not have a book. Even if the average person was literate, their type of literacy is different to what we think about today. They would have used literacy basically for writing and reading letters to people rather than reading books, because books didn't exist in a way that was consumable by the general public. And it was only the aristocracy and the priestly class that really read books. They were expensive and they just weren't very accessible. And even the first printing press, you had to put each letter in individually, and then you were printing one page at a time. So I'm not sure exactly what the year was when, mass-produced books became readily available. When mass-produced books became available, there was a hue and cry from people that book reading was going to damage people's brains and was going to ruin people's morals. And there was the same outcry about books as now we're having about digital and video. People had exactly the same response. So I do think we have to have some care not to demonize the natural changes that happen in society. Srila Prabhupada emphasized books for two reasons. First of all, his Guru Maharaj told him, if you have money, print books. And second of all, he saw how the communists made their propaganda in Bengal was through printed literature. So I am completely sure that if Srila Prabhupada were physically present today, he would be emphasizing videos and digital media just as much. You know, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati also talked about dioramas, and Prabhupada wanted these dioramas, and he said that the dioramas would be more effective than his books. Srila Prabhupada also wanted his books to be profusely illustrated. Again, if you think back to when the Goswamis were writing books, books were not illustrated at all. I mean, they just were not illustrated at all. You know, you have medieval manuscripts done in Europe by monks. There were some illustrations in the margins, but often those were unrelated to the content. It was more just decorative kind of thing. But Prabhupada wanted his books profusely illustrated. So there's, you know, he's looking therefore at a visual medium in addition to a print medium. And he's looking at the dioramas, and he wanted to have exhibits like we have in Glory of India, like the robotics exhibit. That was something that Srila Prabhupada wanted. So I just think we should have a healthy dose of caution and kind of step back observation that changes are not necessarily demoniac just because they're different. It will mean, though, that human brains will be developing very differently. I mean, there's plenty of research that the brain will actually develop differently, and that children being raised on smartphones and tablets, which they just are, whether we like it or not, whether we think it's good or not, that is just the reality that children from the age of 2 or 3 years old now are regularly using tablets and smartphones. So their whole way of thinking and processing information is going to be completely different. We are going to have a situation in ISKCON for the foreseeable future of your persons who fight against this trend, thinking that it's all Maya and it's bad and it's evil and it's tamagun, and we shouldn't use anything digital in our schools and for our children. You're going to have people like that. And then you're going to have the majority of our members in our congregation who are already wholeheartedly embracing the technology. So just to kind of keep this in mind, whatever curriculum we produce, it definitely has to have technological links. It can't just be physical books. I think we could start with physical books, but we've got to keep in mind that if that's all we do, we're going to be left behind in the dust. I mean, the BBT was a late adopter of ebooks. The ebook market had taken off for years before you could get Prabhupada's books as ebooks. It was, I'm sorry to say, ridiculous. You know, if I wanted to have ebooks on my reader, I had to export them from the database to RTF, and then I had to convert that into an e-readable format to put onto my device. And that went on for a long time. So I don't think we should be a late adapter. I think that it should have something that's coordinated. There should be bhakti learning apps done from the very beginning. And they should be cheap. You know, if we're going to do expensive things, people just won't. They just won't. Whether they should or whatever, they just won't. This also begs the question of how to fund them, because the funding for app development is very expensive. But that, if we're not thinking like that, we're fools. Actually, we should look at, I teach a course in what's called environmental scanning that was developed under the strategic planning team, which is looking at what are the trends in society and seeing that we're actually working with those trends. So we should look at what are the trends, what are the ongoing trends in education? How are electronics being used? And bake that in from the beginning with whatever we do. And have the other option for people, you know, if people want to read on leaves or whatever, you know, let them have that option available, but not become laggards in the world.
I needed to hear from you so much. I cannot express because I had this whole dilemma. Last 22 years, I've been working in IT, so I have an AI and all sorts of things. That was my profession. But at the same time, when I was a student, I was living in the temple, so I was a book distributing books on the street every day. So I have these books are very dear to me because it's so dear to Srila Prabhupada, but this dilemma, and I can see working with the DFE, the Department for Education in the UK, with the UK government, you can see how much emphasis they're putting in, how to deliver, the mode of delivery for the information to the new generation. So I always had this dilemma because the Prabhupada's instruction about books. So when we hear that if somebody says, "Oh, this is," as you said, the demoniac, it's not. We shouldn't do that because that's probably going to be the future. This is going to be the future. This is the future now we live.
It is. It is. And just keep in mind that when books began to be mass produced, people had exactly the same reaction. Exactly. The Catholic Church actually denounced, tortured, excommunicated Tyndale for printing an English Bible. They denounced him as a heretic. They tortured him. They cut up his dead body and they desecrated his dead body, cut it up. And I mean, because he printed an English Bible. So just think about this. And now that very same church is distributing English Bibles all over the world. This is what happens. I had one, don't ask me the name, one senior devotee at a seminar said there's more value in the smallest bookstore than in all the films that have been produced in human history. And I raised my hand and I said, doesn't that depend on the content? You know, if you have a bookstore that's full of just, you know, romance novels and detective stories, and you have films about Krishna, how, you know, why is the fact that it's ink on paper, why does that make it intrinsically more pious? So again, people are lamenting how our brains are changing, but our brains have already changed. And if you think about the benefit of digital books, you know, like when I was first reading Prabhupada's books, I was taking notes on cards, and then I had them in a little file box, and I had little tabs of headings. So yes, you had to have a very developed memory. But in my parents' time, you had to memorize books. So yes, you really developed your memory, but you know what? If I want to find something now in Prabhupada's books or lectures, I go onto the database and I do a search. And that's, you're developing a different kind of memory. You know, I still am developing skills. It's just a different kind. When I used to want to find something in a Prabhupada lecture, I had to remember which cassette tape. And then I had to fast forward and rewind to get to that point and then write it down. You know, it's just, anyway, it is what it is. Now, if I want to know anything about anything, all I have to do is talk to my phone. Yeah. I don't even have to use my eyes or my finger. I just talk to my phone, and my phone gives me the information in a moment. So again, it's happening. Whether we like it, whether we don't like it, whether we think it's good, whether we think it's bad is irrelevant. It is happening. The brains of the children growing up today are different. They do function differently. They will learn differently. It's not that they have less attention span. This is not true. People saying that children today have less attention span. Not true. They just have a different kind of attention span. They've learned to pay attention to different kinds of things. They've learned to focus on different things. The children today can be totally focused on a video game. So it's not that they have splayed. I mean, I was just at a retreat where we were told, okay, you can have some time to read, but not on digital devices. It has to be physical books. And I said, what about digital devices that don't have internet connection? All it has is a book. Well, oh, I guess, but I'd rather, At the same time, you've got to have the other available for your people who are going to be, what do they call it, Luddites. They're going to be like the Amish. So, and think about the Amish, Prabhu, they don't use buttons or zippers.
No.
Okay? They don't use buttons or zippers. Their clothes, they have to pin their clothes together. Just think about that. Is that what we're looking at? Oh, just hearing Prabhupada talk about just yesterday how, people are manufacturing a microphone, so we have to use a microphone. Right in Nectar Devotion, he said, we must use it. It's being manufactured, we must use it. Anyway, the bottom line is if we don't do it, we won't be able to reach the children that are growing up now. That's all. I mean, we just won't be able to do it. It would be as completely ridiculous as if in my childhood, the school had asked me to memorize books and recite the books like my parents did. My parents' homework was go home, memorize the chapter, come back to school and recite the chapter from memory. Nobody would have done that in the school where I was going. So we'll be irrelevant. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dhanavad.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.